Fantasy, science fiction, horror genres, packed with incredible stories. But some truly unique, captivating gems get overlooked these days. Here are 5 books that Zach and I feel deserve more attention. Ones that hook you in from page 1. Come see what we got.
So hi there, welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son sit down and talk about apparently increasingly more subjects. I'm the son of the equation, Zach.
And I'm the father, Jim. Increasingly more
Yeah, it just
subjects?
felt like we kept adding more, like fantasy, sci-fi, horror. Next we're going to add in some biographies. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Maybe, hey, if it's books, we're into it, right? Except that romantasy garbage.
Speak for yourself.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us here today, everybody. We hope to entertain you with an episode and share some books that may or may not be on your radar, but if they're not, they should. That's our opinion, of course. We hope you'll enjoy this episode and the banter back and forth Zach and I have. If you do, don't forget to give us a like. And we invite you to subscribe to the channel and not miss any of the content we have coming out. So, today we're not talking about books that are bad.
No, certainly not.
It said underrated books.
Yes.
The implication that you should be picking up on is that these are good books that just don't get talked about as much as they ought to, in our opinions.
Maybe they even do get talked about, but they should get a little bit more hype, or they've been overshadowed by other projects.
Yeah, there's lots of factors that can lead to a book being underrated. And even here, I gotta say, books we think are underrated, other people will be like, what? No, all my friends read this. Oh, they all talk about it. We know that. But from our perspective, these have been underrated. And it might be because they weren't marketed real well. It might be they're overshadowed by other big releases that came out around the same time. So everybody was talking about those books and this kind of slipped by. They might be a unique and challenging premise. So a lot of people have been like, I don't think I want to try that. Or, and this is true certainly for one of the books I'm going to talk about today, it's just they've been out so long, nobody talks about them anymore. But they should still, because a lot of younger readers won't even have heard of them.
Fair enough. I will say, however, just to make it very clear, we are at least semi-endorsing all of these. If you go read any of these, we don't think you'll regret it.
No, we do not. I've picked 3 of these books. Zach has picked 2. We'll go back and forth sharing our thoughts on them. But yeah, we agree on all of them here. They're worthy. They're quality books. And they are underrated novels that, if you go into them, you're going to have a chance to explore something different, truly immersive, explore a different world, a different scenario, and it can come from all sorts of genres. We've got fantasy here today, we've got science fiction, and we have horror for you to experience. So I'm up first, and I'm going to dive into the horror one, because
Let's do it.
That's something I lean into more than Zach does, though, Zach, you do appreciate some horror.
And to be clear, the one you're about to mention is on my list to read.
Nice. And I just read it recently. We're talking about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Published in 1959. Way back. Gothic horror, ghost story, paranormal.
I didn't realize it was this old.
Yeah. But it's still impacting the culture. So a lot of people may have heard of the title because of Netflix, not too long ago, having done a series based on it.
Which is fantastic.
That depends on who you talk to, apparently. I've heard some people think it's really flat.
I think they're wrong.
I haven't watched it yet because I didn't want to. I hadn't read the book yet. So since I just recently read this book, now I've got 3 different adaptations because there's been 2 movie versions and then the Netflix series, and I'm going to try them all in order, of course.
There's a beautiful, 20-minute long one-shot that is just, gorgeous, navigating a bunch of challenges. Production-wise, I think it's fantastic.
Okay.
But the book, tell me about it.
Well, this book is really well-written literature, so much so that some people actually read this book in school. Whether in high school or college, it is sometimes used as a novel in a course. I didn't get that when I was going through school. I would have loved to, because this is right up my alley. It's basically the story of a dude who is studying paranormal activities and especially haunted houses and wants to get actually verifiable, valid data to prove such a thing is real. And so to do that, he finds a haunted house, he rents it, and he invites a whole bunch of other people, just random people who may have some sensitivities to the paranormal or some interesting experiences in their past that might have been linked to paranormal. And he just randomly invites them to come join him for a few weeks in this house over the summer. Most of the people he invites don't show up, but a few do. And they have experiences in this house that are, well, you might say the house is indeed haunted. And, these aren't necessarily things you should play around with. The story proves that maybe they shouldn't have tried this. But that's it. It's got a delightful atmosphere of creepiness, and it does a nice blend of supernatural and psychological. So at times, as a reader, you can't really be sure what's happening. Is what's happening manifestation of haunting, or is this person a little crazy? And it's blurred, and that's beautiful.
I'm now very curious what you're going to think of the show, because I can tell you just based off that, it's inspired by rather than a pure adaptation. A lot of what you said rings some good elements, but it is a different story, it feels
well,
like.
well, that's what they do with adaptations, right? I felt it was really nicely written. The character work is great. It's definitely dated because it's 1959,
Mhm.
so you're getting the sense of 1950s, almost 1960s. The roles of men and women very different here. The women are definitely. The women in this story are a little bolder because they chose to come out to something like this. But in that sense, they're outliers. That wasn't normal for women to do, and it's kind of emphasized in the story. So you're getting a little dose of past Americana here. Just know that going in,
There's your grain of salt.
but it doesn't diminish the story one bit. It's really well done.
Okay.
So that's my first one. What's your first one?
My first one, I'm going to jump away from horror, but still in some slightly trigger warning areas. There's probably blood and viscera in this too, which is to say, I'm jumping over to fantasy. This is going to be Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. It's
Ah,
the first of a trilogy, and what I'm currently reading. So now is a great time to read it.
okay. Now this has been out a little while, but not from
A little bit,
1959.
about a decade. It came out in 2016, I believe.
And you said it's the first of a trilogy, and the trilogy is out, the whole trilogy?
Yep, whole
Okay.
trilogy's out. It's a whole thing to read. I can't speak to all of the trilogy. Like I said, I'm only about halfway through this book. But that says something about it that I'm already like, no, I think this deserves more attention. I'm enjoying this in ways I didn't expect. And a lot of it comes down to how it is written.
Okay.
There is a certain almost academic irreverence to this book. Starting with, it employs one of my subtly favorite little writing choices that I've only seen in like 2 or 3 fantasy books, and that's footnotes.
Hmm.
Some
Okay.
people are gonna not like that, think it's weird. I think it's really enjoyable, especially when you're having a story that is clearly being told to you from a perspective of a narrator, of someone narrating these events, maybe even
Okay.
later on,
All right.
giving not just historical context in that way and a different form of exposition, but also sometimes just pointing out things to be funny in the midst of very serious things.
So the gist of this, this is on my TBR, but I haven't read it yet. Give us the gist of what this is about.
The general gist is that within this empire and society, kind of Roman esque in structure, there is a young girl who was slighted, and her family had a bit of an aggressive fall from grace. And she grows up to train to try to be the epitome of all assassins to get her personal vengeance and possibly change the world forever. However, set in a very unique world where the sun almost never sets.
Nevernight.
And so once every like 2 to 3 years, you get an actual night.
Wow.
That's it. So it plays around with what
The
there is
circadian
in
rhythm.
between and what night actually means, and how stealth and shadow still has a role when you take night away. That mixed with a very humor driven but crass narrator sometimes brings just a very delightful style that has me kind of chuckling to myself as I read it.
Okay, nice. Well, that sounds good. I might have to move it a little farther up on my TBR, although I think it's already fairly high on the TBR. Is this the first thing Christoph published?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either because I'm planning to read his books in order. So I think it's a little further down because
Yeah.
earlier stuff I'm going to read
There's
first.
multiple other series by Christoph. He's an established author at this point, and you immediately kind of get the tone for who he is as an author when you read his about him, and he lists about how long he has left to live in days. It equals about 40 more years, by the way.
Okay. All right. Good one. Well, those are the two old books we're introducing. I had one from 59, you had one from 2016, but our
Yeah,
other
mine's
three
not
books
old. What are you
our,
talking
our
about?
other three, well that was almost 10 years ago, but our other
Oh,
three
yes.
books are just in recent years, very recent publications. So my next one is also from the fantasy genre, and I want to talk about The Black Crown by John A. Douglas, which was published in late 2023. It's just fantasy, leaning into epic fantasy.
Okay.
It's book one of his Age of Adventures. And I've talked to John about it. He has a whole plan for books and books and books that'll all be in the same world.
Is it above
But
you?
it is. It is right there. Yep. But it'll be like a trilogy here and a trilogy there and a trilogy there that are not necessarily flowing one to the other, just taking place in the same world. And so, book two in this series, and when you finish this book, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, give us more. Yeah, he's not going to give us more for a while. He's going to go start one of the other trilogies next, and then start the other trilogy, and then he'll circle back. That's his master plan.
Interesting.
Yeah. What this is, it feels very traditional fantasy. You've got a world with elves, humans, and orcs. And there's definitely some background and past where things were very contentious, and the orcs had risen up and almost dominated everything and then were crushed down. They fell short at the end. And so the elves are supreme right now. The humans are kind of secondary, and the orcs are trying to survive hidden in the wilderness, basically. But there are also some half breeds that are significant, and our protagonist in this story is a half orc. So he's half orc and half human, raised in the royal household of the human nation, because the orc king had kidnapped the queen of the humans,
Hmm.
and he got her pregnant
Oh,
before she was recovered,
rough
and she
start.
and she would not terminate the pregnancy. So, ta-da, we get this person, and there's a whole bunch going on here in this story that Douglas does a beautiful job revealing bits at a time as you get to puzzle out what's really going on in the midst of this grand adventure. The protagonist is so well written, he's so engaging. He has no idea even who he truly is, what his background and what his possibilities are, and he's stumbling along through an intense challenge, what turns into a quest in essence, figuring things out as he goes, and thus we, as the readers, are figuring things out as he goes too. So it's very entertaining. It's not told exclusively through the protagonist's point of view. You get some
Okay.
other perspectives, but his point of view is the primary vehicle that we get this story through. I just found it a really fun ride with believable characters, pacing that was very engaging. It kept my interest all the way through. I'd heard about this book pretty much right when it came out and hadn't gotten around to it. And when I finally read it, I was like, why did I wait so long? This was a hoot. And I look forward to reading more of John Douglas's stuff. Now, John Douglas on social media is also a hoot. If you've paid attention at all and seen his stuff on Twitter, for example, he also has a YouTube channel. He says it like he feels, and he doesn't care what you think. So he can be rather abrasive on some topics, and some of it he just, I swear, he just puts it out there to make a splash. But, if he doesn't like your opinion, he calls crap and says what he thinks it is. And if you're offended, he's like, fine, unsubscribe or cancel or block me. I don't care. He's very genuine and abrupt. I have had no problems with him. But more often than not, I've found the things that he's taking strong stands on. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's not a problem for me. So he would definitely be anti-woke, for example. So he is a little old school, a little abrupt on some things. Don't let that interfere with trying the book. That's kind of why I went into it, because the book is just delightful.
Okay. I will say I'll probably tuck it away as like I'll revisit this in a decade when each of those trilogies he's starting is finished, and I will, if I like it, have the opportunity to keep reading.
See, I'd say that would be a mistake because it is that good. And it doesn't leave you on a cliffhanger. It ends the story. But you can tell where it ends things that there is more that can be told. There's more to come. But it's a self-contained tale that's very satisfying. I would say it's worth just reading now. But
Hmm.
that's me. The reason it's underrated is he's self-published. It's hard to get out there. No
It
publisher
is.
wants a traditional fantasy book like these days. There's none of the characters that the publishers are looking for. It's just classic fantasy. But it's really good classic fantasy. If you're one of those people going, man, I wish I could find something like in the good old days. And I know, Zach, you don't always agree the good old days being all that good.
Sometimes they're just the old days.
But this will fit what you're looking for. All right, what's your next one?
Yeah, something that is definitely not from the good old days, but it fits into something I don't read a lot myself. I've already mentioned I don't read a lot of horror stuff. So when there's an author that I like and writes horror things that I actually enjoy, I'm not going to shut up about them.
There you go.
If you've been around this channel before, you may have probably heard me talk about Jonathan Sims. So I'm going to bring a new book into light here that I read earlier this year.
And I'm interested. I've already
Family
read a Jonathan Sims recommendation of yours. So,
This one is Family Business. Came out in 2022. It tells roughly the story of someone dealing with their own grief and trauma, but also joining into a family business where they clean up. It's
are they
literally
cleaners? Is that what you're saying?
not a mafia cleaners thing, but they are the cleaners. When someone is discovered a week later having passed away in their sleep in their home,
Ah,
they're the people who come in and actually clean the flat and deal with the things. And sometimes that's some more traumatic situations, and sometimes that's just a peaceful, yeah, they died in their sleep. And maybe there's some spooky, supernatural, and more sinister undertones of something more going on within this story and this dynamic. There's a little bit more to the family business than we initially think might be going on. This, for me, was a little bit of a departure from what I've seen with Sims before, in that it is mostly a single protagonist through this story, focusing on their journey and more of a singular but longer form story. Previous things I've read were more collections of short stories that kind of wove together. I will say, I wish it was just a little bit longer, which is potentially a good thing
interesting.
and a bad
Yeah.
thing. I just wanted to be able to dive a little bit deeper or develop a little bit more into some things. I was not disappointed by the book, but I did find myself going, now I have to wait however many years until he writes another book.
Okay.
So if you've read any Jonathan Sims, if you've listened to the Magnus Archives, super recommend this. If you just like a little bit more thought-provoking supernatural, maybe a little eerie but not actually scary or too gory of horror, this is going to be up your alley. And so I find it to both be a little unsettling but also still approachable for the genre.
Okay. Well, this one was not on my radar yet, but I have enjoyed Jonathan Sims thanks to your recommendation of 13 stories previously. So I'll add this to my TBR. Thank you. Good one. Again, underrated.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my last one is one of the most recent things I've read, Pilgrims by M.R. Leonard, which just came out about 6 months ago, late in 2024.
Okay.
It's science fiction, and it's basically an alien first contact story like none other you've ever seen. And it was so freaking good. Leonard's book is published by Blue Press, something like that, but this is like the only book it's published. I think he's really self-published and created something called Blue Press Publishing or something. I did some research. I'm like, there's no other books by this company. It's not really have a website. It's
No other books yet.
so it doesn't say self-published, but basically it's self-published. He reached out to me saying, "Hey, you want to read this book? I would love to, love to have you read and review it." And I was like, "Well, I got a big long list, but I'll consider it." And then he said, "We have an audio version too. I can send you the audiobook." I went, "Oh, well, it'll get read probably sooner if you do that." So he did. So I did. It fit in between other stories, and I was
And
like,
you're glad you did?
"Wow." It was so much fun and such a novel approach to telling such a story. Here's the deal. You've got a world that is really in stress. This is Earth. Okay, our Earth, just a little bit in the future, not very much in the future. But there's aliens coming, and they've known the aliens are out there for like 5 years. Like they approached, and then they paused, or they slowed down. And for 5 years, Earth has been reaching out to them, trying to make contact, trying to communicate. Silence. Nothing coming back. This has caused chaos on Earth and governments to crumble and then things to instead come into play to keep maintain order, and it's transformed the world as we know it over the past 5 years. It's not necessarily a very happy place right now in order to keep the world from completely disintegrating. But this is the moment then when the aliens finally approach and make contact, and they speak Latin. The aliens speak Latin, and they are Roman Catholic.
And that immediately has some very interesting implications.
Yeah, there are reasons they're Roman Catholic and they speak Latin. There are legitimate reasons for this. And our main character ends up getting sucked into the story primarily because he is an expert on speaking Latin.
The dead
There are very
language,
few people
which
who
is no longer dead.
it's a dead language, right? Very few people who actually are expert at speaking Latin, but he can. He can translate on the fly. He gets sucked in. We need you because we need to deal with these aliens. And the story and how it unfolds and why they've come, why the heck they're Roman Catholic is incredible. It's a surprisingly deep story. It actually made me think,
Hmm.
like beyond just enjoy the story. It does not matter whether you are Roman Catholic, Christian, or anything else to enjoy and appreciate the story. However, because I am Christian, there was a little extra that I could get out of it. But that's just bonus. That is not necessary to appreciate the story. It was mind blowing for me thinking of how such a thing could have come about as happens in this story. It's really well written. And I will say, I would recommend the audiobook version. It's produced beautifully. It's got a cast, it's got sound effects. It's a full production,
Mm-hmm.
but not overdone. Just really enhances the story. So I could picture things unfolding amazingly through the audiobook. So, yeah, I'd big recommend. I will be doing a full review on this one. Just like with Black Crown, I haven't done my review yet.
But you
Those will be
will.
coming out. Pilgrims, I definitely will. I'll probably have Leonard come on with me and talk about it. He's offered. I'm like, this was a really unique book. I think I might want to have the author on. Let's talk. I also recommended this book to Drew McCaffrey because I know it's right up his alley too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Pilgrims, fairly brand new, self published pretty much. You probably haven't heard of it. Now you have, and you need to go read this story because really well done. Great alien encounter story, and like nothing you've seen before.
There's a decent chance I'll actually get to this year because I'm doing my kind of quasi year of sci-fi.
Hey, well, there you go. All right, those are our 5 books. Now, just to put it out here, what's our point here with focusing underrated books? We want to encourage you to step outside your comfort zone. When you go and try things you haven't heard of, maybe even slightly out of the genre or style that you're used to, you can enjoy some reading that you never would have otherwise. And sometimes you will find new and unexpected experiences highly pleasurable.
Absolutely. Sometimes these books aren't in what's currently popular. They're doing something a little bit different, a little bit unique, and sometimes that's really subverting tropes, and sometimes that's buying into some older tropes that we've now always just been trying to subvert. But regardless, you can often find something a little bit unique and different to try to connect to the character, their struggles, and that can be refreshing.
Absolutely. Zach, I'll give you more kudos than I on intentionally reaching outside what you're used to reading. I know you've been
Mhm.
diving into some books that I'm like, I'm not even thinking to touch, just to see what's there. What else might I experience? And
Okay.
expanding your literary horizons in such a way, I think, has given you perspectives that I don't have.
I'll even pat myself on the back a little bit here because I've also been sometimes diving back into things that I didn't enjoy very much the first time I read them or just thought I might get better. I'm currently doing my reread of Dune, and I can already unfortunately say it's better than I gave it credit for
Oh,
because
whew, okay.
I've hated on Dune for so long. I'm not at the point of going, I'm wrong, but I am at the point of going, I've been being too harsh.
It's good of you there. I did an episode recently on books like that I'm thinking to maybe be redo, and the one at the top of my list is Wicked, The
Mm.
Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, because I think I maybe misjudged that book.
I remember you really not liking that when you
I,
read it.
I got I threw the book away. I mean, that's how bad it was for me, and I'm like, I maybe just wasn't ready for it. So, as to these books, where do you find these, Zach?
Well, on the one hand, you can find them where you find books.
Oh,
I'm
that's
always,
shocking! Wow.
I know, right? I'm always a fan of go check out your local bookstores, whether it's small mom and pops, used bookstores. I think those are actually some of the best places to find some of the hidden gems because you're usually finding what people have kind of moving out of their library, things that are getting brought back. And so stuff that hasn't been in circulation as recently. But sometimes you can also find something a little more obscure at your Barnes and Noble. And if you're doing something like taking advice from us, you can always go searching online. And as much as it might hurt, Amazon exists how it does. You can get cheaper books that way. I don't support doing that as your main way of getting books, but I do support that as if you can't find a book that we're talking about, maybe it was self published, but it's being sold on Amazon, that's probably a valid option.
There you go. For more books like these, be sure to continue to follow our channel. We talk about books that some might not have, and engage online with book communities and YouTubers like us, and you'll find other books that maybe won't hit your radar any other way. And consider diving a little deeper. Like we have a Discord server. Join our Discord server. We find new books from other people on our Discord
Oh,
server
yeah,
who are just sharing what they're reading and the stuff they've discovered. That's how my TBR has gotten so freaking long.
too long.
Recommendations from other book lovers.
No, so at the end of the day, just don't be afraid to try new things. Go out and get out of your comfort zone, do something a little bit different, maybe do it structured like I do, having a theme to a year or a month or whatever to try and push yourself in certain directions. Or if you're not willing to kind of dive all in that direction, keep in some of the comfort genres that you're in, but look for things that you wouldn't always gravitate towards. Not as your regular all the time reads, but something to spice it up a little bit. And at the very least, you'll find yourself appreciating what you usually read more because you've confirmed for yourself it was a good book, but it's still not for me.
Yeah, very true. Sometimes you're going to try something outside your comfort zone and say, yeah, that is still outside my comfort zone. But now you know. All right, thanks for joining us here today. Hope we entertained you and perhaps encouraged you to try some new books here. If you do, let us know. Come back, put it down in the comments. If you've already read some of these books and you have thoughts about what we said today, we'd love to see those comments too. I read and respond to every comment. So test me on that, and I will not disappoint you. Also, in the show notes, you can find that invitation to our Discord server, links to our social medias, our email address if you want to reach out that way. We also have a Patreon page. Thank you to all of our patrons who faithfully support our channel and help us keep this coming out as often as we can. A lot of content that's just me, sometimes Zach and I together like this, and sometimes other guests. Thank you, patrons. We appreciate you. Any last words, Zach?
Nope.
Good. That'll do then. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will talk to you next time.